Welcome and hi, everybody. My name is Joan. I am the host of VISTV. I'm very happy today to have Kathryn Tarner with me. Kathryn is an early intervention speech language pathologist. So welcome, Kathryn.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. At Viscardi this year, we're focusing a lot on wellness. What does wellness mean to individuals? We're really trying to speak to those people who at their position are the boots on the ground, per se. The people who actually do the work and have to go home at the end of the day, having done a full day's work and coming back again the next day. How do you, well, let's go back a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your job first.
Sure. So I have been in the field of speech language pathology for, I want to say, a little over 10 years now. I've worked in a variety of settings, but the one that always drew me back and that I was most passionate about was the little kids, the little babies. So I found myself doing more and more home health and kind of being on the ground, helping the families directly at the start of life so that I can make the biggest impact, hopefully in their therapy trajectory. So that is where I found myself. And for the last about 8 years, I was doing early intervention in the city of Philadelphia. Basically, like you said, I was working one-on-one with the families with whatever they might have needed in the time that they saw me. So not always speech related, but that was what I've been doing for the good part of the last decade.
Wow. Well, kudos to you. And thank goodness we have healthcare workers like you, that's for sure. Having been a nurse, still a nurse, but in my clinical practice, pediatric care is intense. It has a different stressor on the individuals who work in that sector of the healthcare industry. Do you feel that's true? Is my statement skewed, or is that true?
No, I do actually believe that that is the truth. I always make a joke with some of my colleagues that when you're in an adult setting, you can't touch a patient without a diagnosis. I think in pediatrics, it's a bit more of a puzzle. I think you go in there and everybody's sort of seeking to find out what's going on with the child. So that can just be a stressor in general, is there's a lot of unknowns. And I do try myself to be as helpful part of the puzzle to solve those questions. But that can bring a different level of stress when everybody's in it and trying to figure out really what's happening.
So you take the stress, and how do you then manage that stress within yourself? So you're providing care to a child, you're providing care and explanation to a family. How do you walk away from each individual client, patient, and take care of yourself?
That's still something I'm working on, definitely. I think that the more I've been doing it, the easier it is to sort of compartmentalize what I'm doing versus my own life, because as obviously you mentioned, I have my own daughter now and I'm getting a little older. We have different responsibilities in terms of having a house now. So it's gotten easier over the years just to compartmentalize, because I think survival wise, I had to. I think when you're starting out, you're very eager to prove yourself. And so it was a little harder in that way, because I was always bringing the job home with me. But I think somewhat of getting older and just being more realistic is just sort of saying this is somewhat of a job. I have to go home and give my own family what they need.
That's interesting.
Wiser. Yeah.
I think to your statement, where you become older and wiser is true, but I wonder how many of us actually can do that. You know, how do we find a way? It's taken me a lifetime, I really have to say, a lifetime to take my work day and separate it and go home, especially back in the day when I had young children. Are there anything you do in particular during the course of your work day? Things that help you to prepare for that transition home, or just to really care for yourself mentally at work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that home health, kind of like we talked about the negatives and positives maybe of settings. And I do feel that home health is good for me in the way that I do get that decompression time between clients. I think sometimes when you're on all day, like if you're working in a school, you're working in a hospital, you have to go, go, go. I think having that moment in my car or taking a coffee break is really nice meditatively to sort of decompress maybe from a more stressful session you've had or a stressful family environment. So having that ability to sort of tune out between clients has been helpful in this setting.
That's a great recommendation. I wonder now with remote work and how many people work remotely, if they have that opportunity. I work very close to my home, and I've often been very envious of my husband, who's a pharmacist, who would have an hour and a half drive. He would complain in traffic coming from the city, but I would say, at least you get to listen to music that you like.
Exactly. It takes you away from sort of the immediate mental stressors if you can kind of do something that brings you back to a happy moment or just zens you out a little bit. That's been important for me because I've actually been doing a school program this summer, and it's like 10 back-to-back kids. You really have no time to clean up and prep. So it made me appreciate that side of early intervention and that small piece of wellness that I was offered doing that.
Well, that's excellent. How did COVID impact your wellness, your own personal wellness, not the wellness of your clients?
Yeah, so I had a baby April 2020. It was probably the worst time to have a new child. I was very hesitant of having a child just because my mother has her own disabilities and I knew I wouldn't have a ton of support that way. So COVID definitely threw a loop for me. We didn't have anybody visit, anybody come relieve some of that stress for me as a new mom. So I had to really dig deep down and figure out what I needed in that moment. I haven't been someone that has turned to anything for my anxiety. It sort of gave me an edge in my life, which is kind of weird to say. But when I became a mom, it almost became impossible with COVID to navigate that without some extra help. So I did have to seek out some counseling and some anti-anxiety meds myself. But I would say that was the biggest impact. But I was able to take more time with my daughter since no one was spending any money and I could kind of financially figure that out. So that gave me about 9 months without working. So I tried to just hit it, from like the way that everyone else did, like figure out what was making me upset and how to navigate it.
Bravo, Kathryn. One, for mental health has to start with ourselves, as much as we put it on society or our family members, our partners, it starts with us. And I think as a society, we need to keep focusing on kudos to people who take care of their mental health equal to their physical health. So really that's wonderful that you were able to recognize that and then seek the help.
I would have never been able to go back to work had I not worked through my own COVID-related anxiety and postpartum. It's all wrapped into one, like you're saying, nothing is really ever linear, but I did end up going back November 2020 to telehealth. Like you had mentioned, that was really the only model they were allowing us to go back to.
Yeah.
And then February 21, we're actually able to go back in person to clients. And that's really my passion, is to be in person with people. So I ended up going back like more full-time in that February, but I don't think if I had taken care of myself, I would have been in the position to continue to help families. So.
Yeah, it's not just the industry you're in, it's the personal situation you're in. You're making me think about it because one of my future guests is a postpartum worker, birth worker. And that's a field that more and more is being seen because individuals need assistance postpartum, navigating not just that aspect, but the work environment, that they're going back to.
I was supposed to have a doula and who was not allowed in, obviously, after the world shut down with COVID, but she was actually able to help us when I had a postpartum emergency. I had a retained placenta and I had to be rehospitalized without my husband, without my child. And so we called upon our postpartum doula to help us in that situation. So to your point, COVID really just took away community. And that was really, really, really hard. I knew I was going to go into being a new mom without much community in terms of family. I was far away from everybody in Philadelphia. So COVID just threw a completely another wrench in that.
And here you are, and I'm so happy you're sitting here with me now. It's really wonderful. Can you tell me a few things that your joy that your position gives you? So we talk about wellness. If I drew a diagram, I could say wellness equals happiness. I haven't gotten there yet. With everyone I'm interviewing, I haven't come through my formula with that result, but I'm working on it. But wellness, there's a balance between how we view mental health and wellness, physical well-being, and happiness. So do you see in your position things that make you happy, that you enjoy, that are fun?
Oh, absolutely. So my whole job is play-based. So I know not everybody loves to play. I love to play. It's a passion of mine. It's how kids learn. It's how I can connect with kids. So by and large, I love playing. So this is the perfect job for me. And I also just love connecting with people. So being in different homes, different cultures, different life circumstances really gets to combine my clinical medical passion with that humanitarian effort, which is just helping people to be their best selves. You know, I didn't get to where I am today without help when I needed it. And so I like to be that help for other people. It brings me a lot of joy.
Well, it's interesting because now, as you say that, I think about some of my past guests where it's the joy we give others that increase the joy in ourselves.
Definitely.
And I definitely believe that if we're happy at work, we can bring that happiness home, you know, and that positive energy home.
Definitely. Absolutely.
So to all those leaders that I originally interviewed, our first year of interviewing on VISTV, it was how do we motivate people? You know, what do leaders do? So to all those leaders, I hope they're listening and here, keep the work environment happy, you know?
Yeah, that's so true. I was just talking to my husband today about energies and how what we emit really does become the room. And so there is something called toxic positivity. I mean, I try to be pragmatic also. I realize that there is a balance for both, but I do think general positivity, and like, I wouldn't be a therapist without positivity. I can't go into it. You know, maybe doctors can be cynical and more realist, but I'm supposed to be the family's biggest cheerleader. I'm supposed to believe their children can do anything and everything. And so I have to bring that energy to my work.
And that is evident in your joyful way of speaking about it, which is great. But it adds a definite side of the more we give, you know, we drain ourselves. So we have to find at the end of the day a way to pick that up again. And I think you've given a lot of insight on that. Anything about your type of position as an early intervention speech language pathologist that you could impart on others? You know, anything about the field that you find fun, interesting, that maybe people don't know about?
I think my biggest takeaway from doing early intervention this long is just I'm always notoriously terrible at setting boundaries. I think it's one of the things that makes me good at my job in terms of just being open, and I easily flow from different, you know, cultures and religions easily, but I also don't set great boundaries. So like moving forward, I think it's important to realize that like just because you use your home phone for a job that you still have to set those boundaries with families, because I still sometimes get those like Thursday at 9:00 text or that Saturday at 8 a.m. text. And so even though we're there to help people and we are a giving profession, it's still important to, from the start, to set your own personal boundaries, because at the end of the day, we're not working like a traditional 8 to 5 job. And sometimes people will take that and sort of use it because you are in an emotionally bearing position with them doing home health. So that's something that I tell younger generations to be aware of.
Yeah, it's something I think probably most sectors in healthcare can learn from that. It's very easy to not set a boundary. Even personally, it's easy not to set a boundary. And then
absolutely. And then it bites you if you don't start strong. So I always tell to start strong with that, because once you let it go, people will take advantage of that. So
yeah, and boundaries help us just to have our own space and time.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I thank you so much. I think you gave us many tips. I'm definitely going to walk back to my staff and think positively and remind myself that my energy is transparent and that it's important for those who work with me.
I'm sure you're a wonderful leader because you always exude positivity and you're just very easy to talk to, which is a wonderful quality.
Well, I thank you very much. And likewise, you've given me a lot of insight into where I think I want to go in the future with VISTV. I think it's really important. Maybe we look at people who, if work continues to be remote, what are the people's lives at home like, and how do we help them transition, you know, postpartum into an easier way, and just maybe post-traumatic. You know, there's so much trauma that goes on in individuals. So I think it would be helpful.
It'd be very helpful for the whole population. Absolutely.
For sure. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.